Hello everybody, Maven here, and episode of Revenant launched today. Maven here from the future to let you know I recorded that intro last week and I thought it would be the first video I would put out when Revenant was released, but I was wrong. Now let's resume the video. And with it comes the brand new Exotic Hunter helmet, the Mask of Fealty. Now this is what Stasis Hunter has always wanted. Now don't get me wrong, I love the Renewal Grasp. It allows you to spam so many dust field grenades, but one of the main identities of Stasis Hunter is Shatterdive. Now, what exotic are you going to use for Shatterdive? Because it sure ain't the Renewal Grasp. In the past, I've typically used things like the Wormhusk Crown or even the Frosties. Those have been my go-tos for Shatterdive, but there's never been a dedicated Shatterdive exotic. But now we have the Mask of Fealty to save the day. This exotic makes it so when you throw a Stasis Shuriken at a target, it will create a Stasis Crystal at their location. And if you throw a Stasis Shuriken at a target that was already frozen, it will make a scattering of even more Stasis Shurikens that spread out and hit more targets and make more crystals. And what do we want to do with these crystals? That's right, Shatterdive. So this is the new and only go-to Shatterdive exotic. So let's give it a try and see what it can do. Hope you enjoy. So present day update, supposedly this exotic is bugged. It's supposed to create a volley of Stasis Shurikens when you throw a Shuriken at a crystal, but apparently it isn't doing that. Now, if it did work, it would make this build even crazier, but it's still insane as it is. And I gotta say, this is the most fun I've had on Hunter in a long time. This build is so much fun. So since it's a Shatterdive build, you can tell the reason that we want the Mask of Fealty. Creates a baby Stasis Crystal wherever you throw a Shuriken, and it doesn't even need to hit a target. It just creates one wherever it hits. You can throw it at the floor and it would make a crystal. So that just gives us something to Shatterdive on. And obviously we also have our Glacier Grenades to Shatterdive with. But our final way to Shatterdive is going to be our exotic weapon of choice, the Verglas Curve. It comes with the perk Hail Barrage, where final blows with this weapon will grant stacks of stasis arrows and you can hold up to 5 at a time. And your next hip fire shot will fire out all of those stasis arrows and create some stasis crystals, which is another tool for Shatterdive. And you might think you need to get kills with the bow itself to charge stasis arrows, but actually any enemies that die to those crystals you created with the bow will also create stasis arrows even if you Shatterdive them. So it's pretty easy to charge more crystals with the bow. And with that said, between the bow, the Glacier Grenades, and the Mask of Fealty, we have such an abundant of Shatterdive fodder that we can throw out crystals far faster than our Shatterdive cooldown even allows us to utilize them. And Shatterdive only has around a 4-second cooldown, give or take. It's not slow by any means, but we can throw out crystals at a faster pace than that. So what are we going to do with our excess of crystals? Well, we have the Martyr's Retribution in our energy slot with auto-loading holster and incandescent. So if our Shatterdive is on cooldown, we can whip this thing out and shoot a wave of fire through our crystals instead. We shall leave no crystal unshattered. And the Martyrs is also good in situations where the enemies spawn far away from you, so you can lob your crystals like 30 meters away and lob a GL shot through them if you're too far to close the gap for a Shatterdive. Now, if you're a newer player, you might be wondering how we're able to spam so many Shurikens and Glacier Grenades. Well, aside from the obvious Gambler's Dodge, we are running the Grim Harvest aspect, which creates stasis shards when defeating slowed or frozen targets. These stasis shards grant melee energy on pickup, but also grant stacks of frost armor, which can stack up to 5 times for a 22.5% damage resist, each one granting 4.5 damage resist. But we are running Whisper of Rime, which allows us to hold up to 8 stacks of frost armor, and it increases their duration, and that will ultimately give us a 36% damage resistance, and at the rate we are throwing out crystals, it's safe to say we'll have that active at all times. Especially with Whisper of Conduction making those shards track towards us, so we don't really have to even pick them up, they kind of just fly towards us. And we get even more stasis shards with the artifact mod called Hail the Storm, which says that stasis crystals create shards of ice that slow targets when they shatter, which just ensures that every target will proc Grim Harvest and make shards for us. And to add insult to injury, we have another artifact mod to pair along with the insane amount of shards we're getting, and that's Crystalline Converter. This artifact mod is busted. It says that collecting stasis shards charges this perk, which is that meter that you see on the left of the screen there, and when you throw out a powered melee, it scatters around some extra stasis crystals based on how much you have it charged. And you'll see it happen in the background gameplay most times when we use a Shuriken. It's pretty insane. So that was the long way of explaining how we get a bunch of shurikens, and the ways that we're getting infinite glacier grenades is mainly with two different fragments, the first of which is Whisper of Torment. It says that we're granted grenade energy when we take damage, but this effect is increased while we have frost armor, which once again is active pretty much all the time. And I tested our grenade regen with and without Torment, and Torment basically doubled it. So the effect is very powerful, I can vouch for that. And the other fragment boosting our grenade regen is Whisper of Shards, which massively increases your grenade regen for 5 seconds when you break a stasis crystal, but you can break additional crystals to increase the duration of this benefit to 10 seconds. And remember, since we can break a crystal basically every 2 seconds if we wanted to, this buff is pretty much up all the time, and it just gives us a ridiculously fast grenade cooldown. So now you understand the gist of this build. It's so fun. You really got to give it a try to understand how fun it is. Shatterdive is such a strong and fun ability. It's so underrated. So anyways, let's continue with the breakdown of the rest of the build. The last fragment I didn't mention yet is Whisper of Fissures to increase the radius and damage of our shatter effects. Obviously, we got to run that. And on to the mod setup. It's completely geared towards ability spam and nothing but ability spam. So the main idea is that we want to utilize grenade kickstart on our gloves. So we gotta get armor charge. And the main method of that is elemental charge on our boots that says that an elemental pickup, such as a stasis shard for example, gives us a chance to get a stack of armor charge. And at the rate we're making shards, that's incredibly easy. But that's not gonna grant us 1 stack of armor charge, it's gonna grant 2, because we have stacks on the boots. And we can hold up to 4 stacks of armor charge because of charged up on the chest. So between elemental charge and solar and stasis siphon on the helmet, as well as firepower and heavy-handed on the gauntlets, it's extremely easy to get 4 armor charge to expend on grenade kickstart most times that we use it, because basically everything we do makes an orb. And picking up those orbs will also heal us because of recuperation on our boots. And a little tip for you, I always dodge immediately after Shatterdiving if I have it up, because we do have powerful attraction on the class item to collect any nearby orbs when we dodge. So doing this will grant us healing and armor charge and proc bomber and outreach on the class item for even more free ability energy. So don't get greedy and save your gambler's dodge for when you're near something. Just use it right after Shatterdiving if you have it, trust me. And as for the rest of our mods, we got a couple resist on the chest and then heavy ammo finder on the helmet. And for our stats, I recommend triple hundreds in mobility, resilience, and discipline, and then maintain that tier 3 intellect soft cap and dump the rest into strength. And for your heavy weapon with this build, I don't really think it matters, but my top 2 recommendations are the slammer with eager edge, so you can skate around and close the gap for shatter diving, plus you can also shatter skate. But if you're doing an activity where a boss is involved, I recommend the new Vesper's Host GL, which is called the Versus Chill Inhibitor with Envious Arsenal and Bait and Switch. And that about does it for the build. For the gameplay loop with the build, I already kind of went over it, the whole thing about comboing dodge immediately after shatter diving. Other than that, just practice getting the habit of swapping to your auto-loading GL while your shatter dive is on cooldown. It takes a little getting used to, but once you get it down, you'll be cruising through mobs like nothing. And by the way, if you don't have the Martyr's Retribution, a Deafening Whisper is fine if you got that with auto-loading, but if you don't have that either, then you should go back to the Helm, which is now accessible through the portal in the last city. You can talk to Failsafe and pick up last season's artifact. So when you complete activities, you can get failsafe engrams like you did last season. So you should definitely pick that artifact up on all 3 characters, rack up some failsafe engrams, and focus some Martyr's Retributions. Anyways, as always, I'll leave a dim loadout link to the build down below in the description, and also the pinned comment if you'd like to give it a try. And if you got any buddies who are Hunter mains, I'd appreciate if you share the video with them. This is probably something they might want to try out. It's an incredibly fun build and the most fun I've had on Hunter in a while. I recommend trying it out in Onslaught. You'll have a blast, trust me. So let me know what you think about the build, and by the way, yes, I did consider the Icebreaker if you are wondering, but the Verglas Curve and the Martyrs just fit better into the theme of Shatterdive spam, so that's my argument there. But the Icebreaker is definitely a fine option as well in certain scenarios, because when you break a crystal with it, it causes an ignition, and this build makes tons of crystals. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to drop a like for the algorithm, and maybe subscribe if you're new. Would love to have you here for more episode Revenant builds that are in the works and on the way, and I'll catch you in the next video. See you later.